Welcome to another episode of Behind the Business, presented by Gore Mutual. Today's episode is also sponsored by BDC as we celebrate BDC Small Business Week. I'm your host, Ian McLean, President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. This podcast is recorded on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Each episode, I sit down for candid conversations where we go beyond the boardroom and behind the business to uncover the real stories within Waterloo Region's business community. Today's episode is sponsored by BDC, the Bank for Canadian Entrepreneurs, as we celebrate BDC Small Business Week from October 19th to 25th. Each day, we're spotlighting a different small business owner from our community, the people who power our local economy, create jobs, and bring innovation to life. We're also excited to have this year's theme focus on the economic revolution and getting your business ready. Today, we're sitting down with Bruce Ysselstein of the War Room Baseball Training Center, a lifelong baseball enthusiast. Bruce turned his passion for the game into a space where athletes of all ages can develop not just their skills, but their confidence, discipline, and love for the sport. Through the War Room, he's creating a community where mentorship, teamwork, and growth go hand in hand. We'll unpack what fuels Bruce's passion for the game and how that drive powers his work as a coach and entrepreneur. Join me as we go behind the business with Bruce Ysselstein. Well, thanks for joining us today. I know one of the most valuable commodities that business people have and entrepreneurs have is time. So we thank you for sharing some of your valuable time with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Now, so let's start at the beginning. I mean, this series this week is around entrepreneurs and business folks, and as much as anything, it's a little bit about leadership, but also the business story behind entrepreneurs. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business and how it came to be. It's always a fascinating journey of how things happen.
Well, you sort of allude to it there. You know, I think the neat and tidy answer would be, well, I went to school for this and I transitioned into this. And I think with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's the other side of that pendulum. I went to school for economics and stumbled my way into project management. I don't think anyone grows up saying, hey, I want to be a project manager when I grow up. But my most recent business venture, the War Room Baseball Training Center in Guelph, is something that, and I know we'll get to this, but it's something that I think fills a need. It's a bit of a passion project for myself and my partners. We all come from, and I'll say several decades and 20 or so pounds ago, but we all come from high level sport, and we believe in the value of youth sport, not just in the sporting sense, but in the youth development sense. So I read, me personally, in this recent business venture, I read an article, and I'm going to say it was in probably Entrepreneur Magazine or something like that, about 5 years ago, on 4 regular dads, northeastern United States from memory, whose kids they have a similar climate to us. They didn't have a place to train in the off season. And they decided to start it wasn't even a small business at the time. It was just an indoor space. And that grew and grew and grew. And over the course of 15 years grew into a multi-million-dollar business that obviously has been successful on the from a profitability standpoint, but also in terms of the number of kids that they have helped to develop into not just great athletes, hopefully, but young adults with grit and determination and work ethic and all those things. So that planted the seed for me. And then about 14 months ago, the head coach of my son's baseball team came to me. The season was over. We were walking across the grass outfield towards the parking lot, and he said, hey, in a few weeks, when we've had some time to catch our breath, I wouldn't mind talking to you about a business idea I have. And I don't know why, but I knew what he was talking about. And I turned and I said, is it by chance an indoor baseball training facility? And shocked, he said, yeah, it is. And a couple of weeks later, we were sitting down with an additional person that we brought into the mix at that point, talking about what that might look like, and went from there.
Mm. It's always fascinating, and how the idea of a business comes from for many entrepreneurs, from something they're passionate about. When you think about, so it's still early days. I mean, in the grand scheme of this business, it's still early days. But when you think back to the start, the very start, what was the biggest learning curve or surprise? Because you come from a business background,
Yeah.
you've done project management, but running your own business, especially a startup business, what this is, there must have been some, learning that you got from that, or roadblocks. What were some of the things that surprised you about this new venture?
Well, maybe I'll answer that twofold. As you pointed out, yes, I have a fairly long business experience background. It's not my first startup. And one of the things I learned early on, that, and it's the same as anything, as you learn something, you then apply that to future businesses in this case. One of the things I learned early on is that there is a big difference between what we as entrepreneurs might think people will value, people will pay for, perhaps even what people say they value and will pay for, versus when it's time to actually pay for it, what they will actually pay for. And I think I've certainly been involved in businesses prior where on paper it was a home run, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I've learned through experience that you need to dig a little bit deeper into that. Talk to people about the specifics. Look at other existing businesses if that's possible, and how do the numbers work there? So that's the first thing. And when we first started this business, or the business planning element of this business, one of the things that, and we had some serious, between myself and my partners, we had some serious discussions about this. One of the things that I was ardent about was, these numbers look great, but how do we know these numbers are real? And I think that's a big learning that I brought to those early business planning stages. The other thing that I think I probably need to talk about is the element of, especially if you have a physical location, the element of zoning, of permitting, that sort of thing. They're all necessities. We can argue till we're blue in the face about the validity of some of them, but they're a reality. And especially when you are talking about both budgeting, and that would be money and time, you need to take those things into account, because they take a lot longer than most people think.
Well, I think that's really important, and asking questions, especially at the front end, and having mentors who have been through some of those things, who've got some experience in that, is really important, because you're right. Budgeting of time in the early days is as important as anything else. So you manage your cash flow. It's a very good point, especially for others that are watching this and may think, I'm going to start my own business. Learning from others' mistakes is probably the best thing you can do. Yeah. This is true for everybody that's ever been in business broadly, but specifically for small business owners. So you got 3 partners, you may have some staff, but ultimately it's a small operation right now. Small businesses owners wear a lot of hats. You got to do payroll, you got to deal with government and taxes and scheduling and, staffing, you name it, you're doing it. And you're probably, between the 3, you're doing a little bit of all of it together, even if you divide it. So you're wearing lots of hats. What have you learned about yourself as a leader or entrepreneur through the process? I mean, one of the things that I hear often is, I'm not good at everything, and I got to find somebody who's good at the things that I'm not good at. Is that one of those areas? Like, what have you learned about yourself?
Yeah, unquestionably. And I think I go one step further. It's not just, well, dealing with government, dealing with payroll, dealing with, all of these other things. It's refilling the paper towel in the washroom. As a small business owner, I mean, it's the full spectrum, and no exaggeration there. I think what I've learned over the years, and this venture has been no different, is that I'm reminded of how little I know about the things that I know little about. And to your point, there are times, we live in an age where, Google quite literally contains the entirety or almost the entirety of human knowledge. There are times when you can answer a question very quickly and it's there. But there are times when you need an expert, be that just from an experience standpoint or just a knowledge standpoint. And you need to reach out to those people, and the networking, the mentors, in my case, the partners, are all a big part of what that solution looks like.
As we got started with Trump and tariffs, to your point, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've been in business for some fashion for 30 years.
Right.
And when they started talking about tariffs and there was all kinds of terminology, I have not heard of any of this. And so going to at KPMG and having a session with someone going, oh my God, I know nothing about tariffs.
Yeah.
And how it impacts my members. Like it's so detailed. So even if it was on the internet, I wouldn't have understood what it was saying. And so, in one of those cases, I'm like, okay, we need to bring some of these people on. You need to make it accessible for our members in the same way you're talking about. If you don't know something about it, it can get very complicated, and you got to ask the people that know about it.
Yeah, and that's the downfall of I referenced the Google being the entirety of human knowledge. The flip side to that is, it's the biggest haystack that man has ever known, and you're trying to find the needle in the middle of it.
So finding partners, so you got your own partners, but also trusted partners, whether it's accountants, whether it's your traditional banking. BDC is one of those.
Yeah.
We've been a big proponent at the chamber. They're very involved with us, obviously, in Small Business Week, our Small Business Awards. But BDC is one of those valuable partners, particularly for entrepreneurs, for smaller businesses, because of the complementary things they can do to support business. So talk about, how did you develop the relationship with BDC, and how did it get started? Like, how did you find out about them or make the connection, and how have they supported your venture? Because it's different than traditional financing or angel investors or they play a very specific role, but an important one for small business and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, unquestionably. Well, so some advice I got very early on in my business career, the first business that I was involved in, someone who knew much more at the time than I did, said to me, and let me be clear, there are things in business that you are going to spend money on that you'll look back on and think, boy, that was not the best way to spend the money. But this mentor said to me, the first thing you do, find a great accounting firm. And you will pay for it, but it will be money well spent, I assure you. And the first question you ask them once you have that relationship is, can you refer me to a good law firm? And that will be a lot of money, but it will be money well spent. And I've had those same two relationships for near 20 years now with that same accounting firm and that same law firm. And when this business got to the point where it was, okay, let's move forward with this, it was actually my contact at that accounting firm who said, you know what, this is really well suited to the BDC business model. Let me make that introduction. He did to our now account manager, Amanda, and she and BDC more broadly have been fantastic through this process. Because I think one of the things that BDC did for us was, and to some extent, I suppose this is what they're known for. They can look at a business for what it Could be.
Yeah.
Whereas traditional banks are...
they're based on the numbers. What you are.
Right. So certainly a second set of eyes to look at those business plans in a critical but very experienced way. They brought great value that way. From a business planning and specifically financial planning standpoint, the flexibility that is there in terms of long-term, financing, that sort of thing, that just isn't offered in traditional banks. And then I think the third thing is BDC comes with a lot of additional resources.
Yeah, consulting and the expertise they bring.
Yeah. Or even a monthly email that drops into my box with a, hey, here's an article that you might be interested in. And some of those maybe not.
Yeah.
But others, hey, that's good knowledge.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that I don't think people know is that they have both the traditional financing part, but they also have the advisory services, right, which can be low or no cost, but certainly it's a great value.
Canada's economy is changing fast. An economic revolution is underway, and your business is at the heart of it. AI is transforming the way we work. Global trade is shifting. Interprovincial barriers are falling. Thousands of businesses are about to change hands, and new investments are taking shape. This isn't a small shift. It's a real economic revolution. Business as usual? That's no longer an option. The future belongs to those who dare, who innovate, who make productivity a priority, who get ready for what's next and take action now. This Small Business Week, we celebrate the entrepreneurs writing the next chapter. You're not following change, you're leading it. Get inspired, network, and go for it. The economic revolution is here. Is your business ready?
Listen, entrepreneurs rarely succeed alone. So we've talked about BDC. The most successful businesses lean on collaboration with other businesses, local partners, sponsors, or folks that they do business with, and organizations like BDC for sure. But how have those partnerships and mentorship, or those that are helping you as mentors, or the financial resources, whether it's bank or BDC, helped you get where you are today? Because I imagine what I always hear is it's a little bit of it's not just one thing. It's borrow it takes a village to raise a kid, and that's where baseball and sports, and I'm more involved in basketball and started a basketball organization for girls because I had two girls that were playing basketball. Yeah. But it takes a village for those things to succeed. Much like it would for a new startup like yourself.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about, I am one of 4 partners, mm-hmm. and the makeup of that partnership has a lot to do with what constitutes our own area of expertise. I come a lot more from the business side of things. One of my partners comes from very high level baseball. His education was down in the U.S. Mm-hmm. on a baseball scholarship. He's now an educator here in Guelph, and that applies to the other 2 partners as well. We all have our own areas of expertise that typically there's overlap, but they complement where I might be wanting. Mm-hmm. One of my other partners fills in that gap. So I think that's key. I couldn't have done this business on my own. That said, there are those, I referenced earlier, that long-term relationship with mm-hmm. with an accounting firm, with a law firm. We've talked a little bit about BDC, but I also have without getting into age too much, I've been in the workplace for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And over that time, I've established some very good relationships that I can now pick up the phone mm-hmm. and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What are your thoughts on that? And the key to those types of relationships, mentorships, is that those people will give you their honest opinion. we're always surrounded as entrepreneurs when we're doing a startup by people who are saying, hey, great, good for you, go for it. But we also need those people who are going to say, hey, have you thought of this? Be careful doing this.
I think it is, you've got that network of mentors, but I think you're probably a mentor to them. Like they would do the same. They're thinking of something, saying, I wonder what you think about that. So it's kind of full circle, but you need those networks that will give you that honest assessment of whether it's a wise thing to invest money or time or move into a market. Listen, and it brings us to this week's or this year's theme for BDC Small Business Week is the economic revolution is here. Get your business ready. And I think it's very timely given what's happening with Canada-U.S. trade relations, the global marketplace. There is a economic revolution, if you want to call it that, but there's disruption to say the very least.
Yeah.
And it's timely because Canada's business landscape is shifting fast. Have you made a change, or is there a change you've already made or are planning to make in your business to adapt to these structural shifts? Like, does it affect your business? I mean, you're dealing with kids and families, but they're all workers. They're part of the community. They're impacted by other things. Are you thinking about adopting new technology to support business, as an example?
Yeah, I mean, technology is sort of the most obvious one. Our business, the baseball industry specifically, but I certainly don't think this is unique to the baseball industry, that technology is a powerful tool when used appropriately. Some of the technologies that we have within our facility allow instructors or athletes training at probably the higher half of the spectrum to train more effectively, more efficient use of their time. Unquestionably. And as part of our business planning, we looked at all of the technology that's out there and decided which ones worked, which ones didn't. Sometimes it was from it's a bit just flashy. Yeah. In other instances, it's, well, what's the return on investment? What's the opportunity cost of spending the money on that technology as opposed to something else? But I think on the business side of things too, boy, I think that if you are an entrepreneur right now and you are not taking advantage of technology to allow you to be efficient with your time, you're doing yourself a disservice. Yeah. One of my other business interests is that I do some advisory stuff with other small businesses. And the first thing I see so often is an old school reliance. It's funny because I've got a paper journal here, productivity planner that I use every day. But the number of times where I see people just being bogged down with, for lack of a better term, time sucks that could be wiped out.
Automated.
Yeah. with technology. In many cases, there's a cost to that. In many cases, there isn't. And I think that's something that we definitely take advantage of in our business. And I can't see how there's a business out there that couldn't take advantage of that.
I'm with you because as someone who puts yellow stickies in his pocket to remind me where I need to go next, even though I've got it on my phone, I'm sort of stuck between both worlds. But there are things that certainly for our members and for us at the Chamber of saying we have to be leveraging those technologies. Listen, many small businesses are listening as we last couple of questions, and we'll go to our rapid fire section. But many small businesses will be listening or watching the podcast. What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs looking to start a new business in our community? Because there's a checklist of things. You got a good idea, you're passionate about it. Is there actually business? You talked about checking the numbers and verifying, a lot of those pieces. But what would be kind of a couple of pieces of advice for someone that's thinking of starting down that entrepreneurial journey?
Right. I think two things. The first is start with a business plan. And if that's something that you are comfortable doing, you have experience doing, do that. If it isn't, find somebody who can help you do that. And I mean a good business plan.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think that business plan is done, spend an equal amount of time trying to break it. Figure out what are all the assumptions I've made here and how could those possibly go wrong, no matter how unlikely that might be. And in every scenario where you can break that business plan, come up with a plan to address that. And if you can't, you have to seriously look at whether or not that's a foundational element of the business plan. I think that I'm as much at fault as anyone, but I think as entrepreneurs, these are often passion projects,
Mm-hmm.
and we're excited and we want them to succeed, and we put on the rose-colored glasses sometimes, and it's your business. You're investing a little or a lot. Take the time to make sure that you're not looking at it through those rose-colored glasses.
Very wise counsel. Listen, looking ahead, you're new. Again, what do you say? 14 months or so that the business has been up and running.
Yeah.
So what's next for it? Like, where do you see your growth? What's over the horizon for the next chapter in the business?
Well, I'll be careful how I say this, just in case our Amanda from BDC is listening to this, because I might give her a heart attack. But I think that sort of 3-5 year plan down the road, there's definitely the element of expansion within that business. But we are also very baseball specific, and we already have people who are coming to us saying, "Hey, I know you're a baseball facility,
But what about basketball?
but what about this?
Yeah.
What about that?" And as much as our facility caters to baseball and softball, there's a lot of youth athletes out there that the same benefit that we see for our business for them. There's a lot of youth athletes out there that don't play baseball. They play soccer, they play basketball, they're into track and field or cross country or whatever it is. And there's a lot of underserved sports. I mean, we're Southern Ontario. Hockey parents would probably disagree with this, but hockey gets a lot of focus. We're in the middle of a Blue Jays run for the World Series right now, so baseball's getting more focus than it maybe typically does. But there are opportunities out there too with the same business model that we've used for this.
Well, and I think it's always, you got to look over the horizon, but make sure you're doing the planning before you take the next step.
Yeah.
Listen, and I said this off the top. This is about, so it's always good to hear the entrepreneurial story, particularly in BDC Small Business Week. But it's also about leadership, because how you approach various things or what's important to you tells a lot about how you're going to respond to business issues or challenges along the way. So I always ask this same set of what I call the rapid fire questions, because it's always fascinating to hear, because there's no right or wrong answers, how people kind of respond to these questions. So I love this one because it's interesting where people slot this in. But if you could go back and tell a younger version of yourself, doesn't have to be when you're a kid, but what would you tell yourself if you could go back in time and tell a younger version of yourself something?
Oh boy. I referenced it earlier, but take the time. I use a book, but it could be a blank sheet of paper. Take the time every day to plan out your productivity. I think so many people, and you don't have to be an entrepreneur for this. You can be a parent, you can be a CEO. If you wake up first thing in the day and think, I'm just going to let the day take over. I found early on, I had a very large number of nights where I laid my head on the pillow and thought, boy, I was really busy today and I got nothing done that was on my list of priorities. So every day I take the time to sit down, usually 5 minutes or so at night, and then another 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, to just write down, what did I get done today? And in the morning, what are my priorities for today? And when I look at that, I'm fairly strict about it. I don't check my email. I don't answer the phone. I get those priorities done, even if there's screaming priorities elsewhere. I get them done first.
That's really wise advice because, I come from a bit of a political background.
Okay.
There's always the crisis of the
Yep.
day, which crowds out the planning for what are the big things you want to get done. And so you wonder why you're always in reactive mode versus proactive mode. Okay. Who or what has inspired you along your journey?
Wow. From a business leadership or maybe more broadly, just business perspective, high level athletes, but let me put a caveat on that. Probably not the ones that most people think of. And I say that because something I know from my own background of many of the high level athletes that most people would recognize their names is their devotion to, in their case, that sport. Their willingness to give up almost everything else to achieve that. When I talk to youth athletes, one of the things I'm fond of saying is, if you want to achieve the things that others don't, you have to be willing to do the things that others can't or won't. And extremely high level athletes, they have that. That for sure. On a personal note, and I only mention this because I think it bleeds into my business life a little bit. I love listening to, and I'm inspired by physicists, a Brian Cox, or maybe more specifically, maybe a bit better name recognition, astrophysicists like a Neil deGrasse Tyson or something. And I love physics, but I think one of the reasons I find them inspiring is because of the way a physicist looks at the world without limits and, mind expanding type of things. And I find when I read or listen to them, I come away, maybe walking into my day in business that day, I come away with a different sense of what's possible.
No limits and what's possible. Okay, if you weren't in your current career, and you've had some various, been in business, you've done different things, what would you be doing if you weren't doing what you're doing right now?
Wow. I have two kids, a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. If I still had kids, but I wasn't in my current career, I'd probably be doing something. I would have loved to have gone into the medical profession. My mother was a nurse. My grandmother was a nurse. Because I always admired those people for every day, good day, bad day, or otherwise. They come home and they've added to the world. They've made the world a better place. And I always respected that, and was always something that I had a keen interest in. If I didn't have kids, Ian, I would be a mountain guide in the wintertime and a fly fishing guide in the summertime.
Well, you've just said physicist, and physicist. I flunked out of science, and those are some great ideas. Listen, I'm always interested in what people are reading or what podcast you're watching or listening to. What are the things that you do to kind of recharge or let go? That keep your attention?
I try to get outdoors as often as I can in terms of recharging. That might be taking the dog for a walk at lunchtime or something like that. In terms of, you mentioned books, I'm reading, or let's be honest, rereading. I think this is maybe my fourth time reading it. A book called Endure, Endure, by Alex Hutchinson. Phenomenal book about the role that maintaining a positive mindset has in not just our daily lives, but how it ties into performance, mental and physical performance. Brilliant book. Podcasts. I drive a lot. Both my kids are involved in high-level sport, which unfortunately has me on the road more than I probably ever thought possible. So I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of my favorites is The Economist. Great podcast, and I think they do a good job of, in layman's terms, putting some perspective on the world.
Cool. Okay, and what's your favorite local business here in Waterloo Region? Restaurant or coffee shop?
Yeah. I think you could name any Thai restaurant in, and it'd probably be on there. I live in Guelph, so I'm gonna go with a Guelph Thai restaurant. There's a place called Naha Thai, Naha, I believe. It's literally run out of the lower level of a house. I've been to Thailand and spent a great deal of time there. One of my favorite Thai restaurants is in Ottawa, where I went to school, but here in the KW region, Naha Thai.
Well, I'll have to make a point when I'm in Guelph.
Great place.
Okay, for where's the best place for anyone listening or watching the podcast to connect with you and learn more about your business and connect with you personally?
So, specifically the baseball training center, the War Room. You can check us out online, www.warroombaseball.com.
Mm-hmm.
We are, other people take care of this, but we are on the socials, TWR Baseball, Instagram and Facebook. If somebody's looking to get a hold of me specifically, by all means, they can email me, brucey@warroombaseball.com.
Listen, thanks so much for taking time. I know, we've already heard being a small business and an entrepreneur takes a lot of time.
Sure.
And so thank you for spending some of your valuable time with us today.
Thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Behind the Business, proudly presented by Gore Mutual. Thanks again to BDC for this special Small Business Week episode. We're celebrating all week and dropping a new episode each day. You can also visit greaterkwchamber.com to catch up on past episodes anytime. We'll see you next time as we continue to go Behind the Business.